The email sat unopened in my inbox for 3 days before I finally clicked on it. The subject line read, Property Management Opportunity, Competitive Compensation. I nearly deleted it as spam until I saw the sender's name, William Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Holdings. I'd been out of work for almost 4 months. Winters in Wyoming were brutal for unemployed wilderness guides, and my savings had dwindled to an uncomfortable low. Out of options, I opened the email, not expecting much but willing to consider almost anything. It began, Mr. Mitchell, your experience in backcountry management and self-sufficiency has been brought to my attention. I own a large property in northwestern Montana requiring on-site maintenance and security. The position offers considerable compensation for a 6-month commitment, beginning immediately. The salary figure listed made me blink twice. It was more than I could earn in 2 years at a regular job. The message went on with unusual specifics. The property is remote, requiring complete self-sufficiency. Outside contact will be limited to weekly email reports to my office. You must arrive alone and remain on the property for the duration of your contract. Hunting is permitted within the property boundaries to supplement provided supplies. I sent back my resume, half expecting silence. Instead, just hours later, William replied with a detailed contract and property specifications. The place was enormous, nearly 500 acres of private land bordering the national forest near Glacier National Park. The house was isolated but had modern amenities, generator power, satellite internet, email only, and a fully stocked pantry. The contract, however, was oddly strict. 6 months without leaving the property, no visitors, mandatory weekly reports, regular maintenance schedules, and patrolling the boundaries. It read like a cross between house-sitting and security work, with a heavy emphasis on privacy. I printed the contract, read it twice while nursing a beer, and found nothing outright illegal. The confidentiality clauses were unusually detailed, though. The payment terms caught my attention, half the amount wired upon signing, the rest upon completion. Even if I walked away halfway through, I'd still be better off than I'd been in years. Before deciding, I called my sister, Beth, the practical one in the family. It sounds too good to be true, she warned when I explained the offer, skirting around specifics as the contract required. Maybe, I admitted. But the company's legitimate. I checked. They own real estate across the Midwest, commercial buildings in Chicago, resort developments in Michigan. And they want you to live alone in the woods for 6 months. What are you guarding, Tom? Nuclear secrets? I laughed. Just some rich guy's vacation home. The property taxes alone must be insane. Send me the exact location before you go, she pressed. And call me when you can. I'll email, I promised, leaving out the part about restricted communication. That night, I signed the contract and emailed it back to William's Chicago office. Within 20 minutes, my phone buzzed with a banking alert. The first payment had already hit my account. Seeing the money eased my worries. The next morning, I began packing my truck. I took my time, carefully choosing what I'd need for 6 months in isolation: my hunting rifle and shotgun, fishing gear, extra ammo, tools for repairs, winter clothes, sturdy boots, and plenty of canned food to supplement what was already provided. I added books to pass the time, since satellite internet wouldn't stream Netflix, and packed a solid first aid kit along with medications. There wouldn't be a CVS where I was going. The drive north from Wyoming carried me through familiar terrain that shifted as I crossed into Montana. The mountains rose higher, the forests thickened. I'd spent most of my adult life in wilderness settings, but something about this trip unsettled me. I had the strange sense I'd driven this exact road before. That's weird, I muttered aloud, recognizing a mountain silhouette I couldn't possibly have seen before. The feeling vanished quickly, and I dismissed it as nerves or excitement about the new job. The GPS led me toward the western edge of Glacier National Park, guiding me down increasingly narrow and remote roads. My cell service dropped out about an hour after leaving Missoula. By late afternoon, I reached Kalispell, the last real town before my destination. I stopped at a large outfitter store for one final supply run. I loaded up on extra ammunition, more batteries, additional non-perishable food, and heavy-duty winter gear. Montana winters were unforgiving, especially in the high country. At the register, the older cashier glanced over my purchases. "Quite the haul," he remarked. "Heading up for hunting season?" "Not exactly," I replied. "Taking a job managing a property near Hungry Horse." His hands slowed over the register keys. "The Blackwell place?" I looked up, surprised. "Yeah, actually." "You know it?" His expression shifted, something flickering across his face I couldn't place. He finished ringing up my items without meeting my eyes. "Been through a lot of caretakers up there," he said finally, handing me the receipt. "What do you mean?" I asked. He shrugged and turned to the next customer. "Just saying. People don't stay long." I carried my supplies to the truck, brushing off his comment. Every small town had its rumors. I checked my directions one last time before continuing toward the mountains. As the afternoon wore on, the roads grew narrower and more winding, twisting deeper into the Montana wilderness. My truck strained on steep inclines, engine groaning as I maneuvered hairpin turns. Dense pine forests pressed close to the gravel road, branches scraping the windows in tight spots. Nearly 3 hours after leaving Kalispell, I rounded a bend and finally saw it, the Blackwell property. The house stood against a backdrop of dense forest and jagged mountain slopes. It was larger than I'd expected, built in a rustic mountain style with thick timber beams and a wide covered porch. Yet it had a commanding presence, as though it owned the land around it. I parked in the gravel driveway and shut off the engine. The sudden silence hit me first, broken only by the ticking of metal as my truck cooled and the faint calls of distant birds. With my bag in hand and William's courier-delivered keys, I stepped out. The air smelled sharp with pine, cooler here than in town. I paused to take in the scene, the neatly maintained driveway, a trimmed path to the front door, carefully stacked firewood along the side of the house. For a property supposedly in need of a caretaker, it looked almost too well kept. The front door opened with a solid click. I stepped inside, boots thudding on polished hardwood. The interior startled me, while the outside looked rustic, the inside was modern and upscale. The main room soared with high ceilings and exposed beams, but modern recessed lighting hung between them. A large leather sectional faced a stone fireplace flanked by built-in bookshelves, their shelves lined with hardcover books. The open kitchen gleamed with granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and professional-grade cooking equipment. "Not exactly roughing it," I muttered, setting down my bag. Exploring the first floor revealed even more luxuries, a wine fridge, a sleek TV setup, though the contract had specified no satellite service, and expensive-looking artwork. In the kitchen, I found a thick binder labeled Property Management on the spine, along with a sealed envelope bearing my name in neat handwriting. Inside the envelope was a short typed note, "Mr. Mitchell, welcome to the property. Everything you need to know is in the manual. Remember our agreement, complete isolation, weekly reports, property boundaries maintained. The pantry and freezer are fully stocked. Hunting zones are marked on the provided maps. Your first report is due in 7 days. William Blackwell." Brief and businesslike, just like his emails. I set it aside and opened the binder. Inside was a meticulously organized manual, daily maintenance schedules, seasonal tasks, emergency procedures, property maps with boundaries drawn in bold red lines, and details on the house systems. The property was even larger than I'd thought, nearly 500 acres backing up against national forest. The maps showed outbuildings, a northern lake, and hunting zones shaded in green. The red boundary lines included notes about maintaining fences and markers. Before dark, I decided to unload my truck and check the utilities. The generator sat in a small outbuilding 50 yards from the house, a high-end model with automatic switching, powerful enough for the entire property. Its fuel tanks were nearly full, and the maintenance log showed it had been serviced just 2 weeks earlier. The well water system was equally well kept, with clean filters and neatly stocked chemicals on shelves. I climbed onto the roof to check the satellite internet equipment. Signal strength was solid. Back inside, I tested my cell phone, no service, as expected. In the small office, I powered on the computer. It connected, but only to email. A browser window showed limited connectivity, just as William had promised. I quickly wrote to Beth, made it to the property. It's nicer than I expected. No cell service, internet is email only, so don't worry if you don't hear much from me. Everything's good here. Love, Tom. After sending the message, I spent an hour unpacking. The pantry and fridge were stocked with enough food to last for months, canned goods, frozen meats, dry staples, even wine and spirits. I added my own supplies and organized my gear in a mudroom off the kitchen. As evening fell, I made a simple dinner and carried it to the back deck. The land sloped gently from the house before vanishing into thick woods. Beyond, mountains glowed with the last light of sunset. It was peaceful. Beautiful, even. Then I noticed something strange. The forest sounds, chirping birds, rustling animals, faded, replaced by a spreading silence. It moved across the woods like a wave, rolling from east to west. In the distance, a herd of deer burst from the tree line, sprinting across an open clearing before vanishing into cover again. I rose, staring into the darkening forest, searching for what had spooked them. Nothing moved. No predator appeared. After several long minutes, I sat back down to finish my meal. But the silence remained, unnatural, heavy. By the time I cleared my plate, it still hadn't lifted. The darkness had fully settled, and the forest had turned into an impenetrable wall of black beyond the glow of the deck lights. I went inside, locking the door behind me. I spent the evening inspecting the house more thoroughly, checking closets, examining the basement with its workshop and wine cellar, and reading further through the detailed manual. Still, I couldn't shake the unsettling sense of being watched, my eyes constantly drifting toward the large windows facing the woods. When I finally went to bed in the upstairs master bedroom, exhaustion from the long drive should have overtaken me immediately. Instead, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the strange new sounds of the house, the low hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the timbers, the faint whir of the heating system. Just as I was drifting off, a noise cut through the night. Something between a howl and a human scream, distant, but sharp enough to jolt me fully awake. I sat up, heart racing, straining to place the sound. In my years as a wilderness guide, I had heard wolves, cougars, even the bizarre calls of elk during rut. But this was different, higher pitched, almost agonized. The cry came again, closer this time, before fading into silence. I got up and went to the window, peering into the darkness. The exterior lights revealed the immediate grounds, but beyond them stretched absolute black. Nothing stirred. No glint of eyes reflected from the trees. Sleep now felt impossible. I retrieved my hunting rifle from its case, checked the chamber, and placed it by the bed. Then I moved through the house methodically, double-checking every lock on every door and window. The manual had mentioned wildlife, bears, mountain lions, wolves, but nothing beyond the usual wilderness warnings. At some point after 3 a.m, I finally drifted into a fitful sleep, my dreams haunted by half-formed images of endless forests and the sense of something chasing me through the trees. Morning light pulled me back from uneasy rest. In daylight, the terrors of the night seemed less sharp. I brewed coffee and stepped outside to walk the grounds. That was when I saw them. Tracks in the soft mud, about 50 yards from the tree line. I set my mug down and crouched to examine them. They were enormous, nearly 15 inches long, too large for any woodland animal I knew. But their shape was worse. Almost human in structure, but with grotesquely elongated toes, each ending in deep claw marks gouged into the earth. The stride between prints was massive, far beyond a bear or wolf, suggesting a creature built for incredible speed. I followed the trail. It circled the house from a distance, then vanished back into the northern woods. Whatever had made those tracks had been watching. I stood at the forest's edge, scanning the trees, my wilderness experience offering no explanation. A thought struck me, to email William about it, but pride stopped me. I didn't want to appear spooked on my first day. Instead, I returned for my camera, documenting the prints before they faded. The rest of the day I filled with practical tasks, organizing supplies, reviewing generator maintenance, and walking the boundary lines marked by red blazes. I kept the rifle slung over my shoulder and found myself constantly scanning the tree line. By nightfall, I shut the curtains tight and lit a fire in the stone hearth. The strange cries never returned, but I couldn't escape the feeling of unseen eyes in the woods. The next morning, my mind returned to the tracks. After breakfast, I inventoried what the house had and what it lacked. The pantry was decent, but I noticed essentials missing: extra flashlight batteries, a sturdier first aid kit, and tools for maintaining the property. A supply run seemed necessary. A map in the office marked Coram as the nearest town, about 20 miles away. Relieved at the idea of getting out, I grabbed my wallet and keys, climbed into my truck, and set out. The air was cool and fresh. The forest felt calmer in the morning, birds calling overhead, a chipmunk darting across the drive. The drive down winding roads felt less oppressive in daylight, though the thought of those tracks gnawed at me. Coram turned out to be a speck of a town, a cluster of buildings with scattered houses around them. A general store with old pumps, a small post office, and a diner anchored the main street. I parked at the store. The wooden building bore faded red letters, Sullivan's General Store. A bell jingled when I stepped inside, greeted by the smell of coffee, wood, and stocked goods. Behind the counter stood a woman with auburn hair tied in a ponytail. Her smile lit as if she recognized me. "Thomas Mitchell, back already? I thought you came in Thursdays." I froze. She knew my name. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" I asked, stepping closer. Her smile faltered. "Very funny, Tom. You've been shopping here for years." Concern crept into her eyes. "Are you feeling all right?" My stomach dropped. Around the store, customers glanced at me. An older man nodded. "Mitchell. Good to see you. Had any luck at those night fishing spots I mentioned?" Cold sweat prickled down my back. I had never seen any of them before. Yet they knew me. The woman, Emma, if the sign was right, laughed nervously. "Tom, you're acting strange. You've always been the caretaker up at Blackwell. Same routine every week: coffee, batteries for the weather station, jerky." Another woman chimed in from the canned goods aisle. "You helped my boy last winter when his car died, Mr. Mitchell." I felt the floor tilt under me. They all insisted I had lived here for years. "I think you're mistaken," I said carefully. "I just took this job. I signed the contract with William Blackwell last week." Emma's face flickered with unease. For a second, she looked frightened. Then, with forced brightness, she asked, "What can I get you today?" Uneasy eyes followed me as I gathered supplies, batteries, tools, a better kit. Emma rang me up in silence, her earlier friendliness gone. She leaned closer as she handed me the receipt. "Be careful up there, Tom. The full moon's coming soon." I opened my mouth to ask, but she straightened, smiling as though nothing odd had been said. Outside, I was intercepted by an older man leaning against the wall. His trucker cap shaded a weathered face, thick white mustache prominent. "Mitchell," he said. "Got a minute?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Robert Thompson. You know me." "I don't," I replied. He studied me. "How's the situation up at Blackwell?" "What situation?" His brow furrowed. You really don't remember, do you? He shook his head and turned away. Sorry to bother you. I was left standing with my bags and a gnawing sickness in my gut. Hoping to steady myself, I went to the diner at the street's end. The chrome and windowed building was half full. I chose a back booth. A young blonde waitress approached with coffee. Hey, Tom. The usual. Her name tag read Judy. What's my usual? I asked slowly. She grinned. Denver omelet, hash browns, sourdough extra crispy. Same every Thursday for 5 years. Her smile faded as she noticed my expression. Tom, are you okay? I gripped the table. What's today's date? She pointed. October 17th. I checked my phone. October 17th. My last call to my sister was October 4th, just before I had arrived. 2 weeks, gone. How was that even possible? And how did these people know me when I'd never seen them before? The drive back to the Blackwell property passed in a haze, my mind circling endlessly through disturbing possibilities. Maybe I was breaking down. Maybe another Thomas Mitchell had been here long before me. Or maybe the property itself was somehow interfering with my memory. When I reached the house, it looked exactly as I'd left it that morning. I carried the supplies inside and went straight to the office computer. Opening my sent emails, I froze. There were weekly reports to William Blackwell, written by me, but with no memory of ever typing them. The first dated October 8th, the second October 15th. Both were detailed, describing maintenance I didn't recall doing, wildlife sightings I couldn't place, and weather conditions I had no memory of noting. The reports claimed I'd fixed part of the roof, cleared brush at the property's edge, and even tracked a large elk through the north woods. My own words, but like they'd been written by a stranger. A wave of panic rose in me. How could nearly 2 weeks vanish without a single memory? What had I been doing all that time? I rushed to my bedroom, digging through my bag until I found a small notebook and pen. If time was slipping away, I needed proof. I dated the first page, October 17th, and wrote down everything I could recall since arriving. I recorded the strange encounters in town, the people who knew me, the missing days. When I finished, I read back through it, searching for something I might have overlooked. Then I made a vow. From now on, I'd document everything, every day, every detail, every odd occurrence. On a fresh page, I wrote in large letters, check the date every morning and night. Write in this journal daily. I taped it to the bathroom mirror so I couldn't miss it. Back in the living room, I unpacked and carefully organized my supplies, forcing myself to focus on the simple task. The afternoon light was fading, and my gaze kept drifting to the tree line, half expecting something to emerge from the shadows. That night, I kept the rifle closer to my bed than before. For the next 3 days, I tracked everything I did. The notebook became my anchor, keeping me grounded in reality as I logged my actions from sunrise to nightfall. Each morning, I wrote the date at the top of a new page and detailed where I went, what I checked, what I thought. I inspected the house, tested locks, examined windows, checked the perimeter for the strange tracks, and made sure the generator and water systems worked. I snapped photos with my digital camera and uploaded them to the computer nightly, proof that my days were real. Afternoons, I explored near the property boundaries but always kept the house in sight and returned before dark. Despite the routine, unease never left me. I checked my phone over and over, confirming the date, terrified that more time might suddenly disappear. My thoughts kept circling back to Coram, to the people who acted like they knew me, to Emma's frightened reaction. Was I truly losing days, or was something even worse happening? On the 4th morning, I decided I needed answers. The manual, the emails, even my notebook weren't enough. I had to know why the townsfolk recognized me. Why Emma had looked terrified when I claimed I didn't know her. I set out early, mist still clinging to the trees as my truck wound down the narrow road. It felt too familiar, as though I'd driven it countless times before. Coram appeared just as it had the last time, small, weathered buildings lining a single main street. I parked in front of Sullivan's General Store, steeling myself. The bell jingled as I entered. Emma stood behind the counter, sorting papers. Her hands froze when she saw me. No cheerful greeting this time, no easy familiarity, just a tense, watchful silence. "Good morning," I said lightly, though my voice betrayed me. "I was hoping we could talk." Emma glanced around. We were alone, except for an old man browsing the back aisle. Her voice was guarded. "About what?" "You know who I am," I whispered. "Last time, you called me by name before I introduced myself. You said I'd been coming here for years." Her grip tightened on the pen. "People make mistakes. It wasn't just you. Half the town knows me. I need to understand what's happening at the Blackwell property. I think you know something." Her eyes flicked to a calendar behind her. October 21st. "I noticed a small moon symbol on the 24th. Is that the full moon?" I asked. Emma paled. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You need to leave before the moon. It's not too late this time." "This time?" "I shouldn't be talking to you," she said quickly, glancing toward the old man. "Please," I begged. "I think I'm losing time." I arrived on October 5th, suddenly it was the 17th. I don't remember those days. Her expression shifted, pity, or resignation. The property changes people. Changes them how? Her hands trembled as she fidgeted with a box under the counter. "I can't help you. I'm sorry." "Emma, no," her voice was sharp now, though still hushed. "None of us can. Leave, Tom. Pack your things and go. Don't stop until you're out of the state." I tried the property records. "They're just maintenance logs. You won't find answers in William's files." She looked toward the mountains. "Try the library. End of Pine Street. Marjorie keeps the archives." Before I could press, the door opened. A young couple walked in. Emma straightened, her professional smile snapping into place. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said loudly, ending the conversation. I nodded and left. At the door, I paused by a rack of local newspapers. One headline from the Hungry Horse News caught my eye: "Unusual wildlife movement, elk and deer fleeing normal feeding grounds. Officials blamed early winter." I remembered the deer bolting from the forest my first night at the property. The parallel made my skin crawl. The Coram Public Library was a small, fading green building. Inside, shelves lined the walls and 3 computer stations sat in the middle. A gray-haired woman with thick glasses looked up from the desk. "I'm looking for local history," I said. "Specifically the Blackwell property." If she recognized me, she didn't show it. She simply nodded and pointed to a back door. "Archives are through there. Newspapers, county records. Sign the guest book first." I scribbled my name. Only 3 others had signed in the past month. The archive room smelled of old paper. Cabinets lined one wall, bound newspapers filled another, and a dusty microfiche machine waited in the corner. I began with the papers. The first mention of the Blackwell property appeared in 1903, a hunting lodge built for Harold Blackwell, William's great-grandfather. Skimming forward through the years, I found a chilling entry in 1910, "Caretaker missing. Authorities abandoned search for John Morrison, caretaker of the Blackwell Lodge. Last seen October 20th in Coram. Harold Blackwell appoints his nephew Samuel Porter as replacement." I flipped pages faster. 1917, Samuel Porter, missing. 1924, James Wilson, presumed dead after 7-year disappearance. 1931, Thomas Brooks replaces him. On and on it went. Nearly every 7 years, always in late October. Always a caretaker. Always gone. My hands shook as I photographed each article. When I reached the 1980s, things grew worse. Photos appeared, caretakers who all bore unsettling similarities. Similar builds. Dark hair. Light eyes. Men who could almost be me. The most recent article, dated 2016, stopped me cold. Thomas Mitchell appointed caretaker of the historic Blackwell property. A grainy photo showed my own face staring back. I sat frozen, staring at the page. According to these records, I had been here since 2016. 7 years ago. But that was impossible. I had been guiding wilderness trips in Wyoming. I had records, clients, my sister, Beth. She'd know. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number, even though I knew there was no reception out at the property. To my surprise, the call went through, ringing 3 times before switching to voicemail. Beth, it's Tom. I need you to call me back as soon as you get this. It's important. I need to know exactly when we last saw each other in person. I paused, then added, and if you have any recent photos of us together, can you send them to me? It's really important. I ended the call, not expecting much with the patchy reception, but I had to try. Gathering my notes and photos, I thanked the librarian as I left. She barely glanced up from her computer. Back in my truck, I sat for a while, piecing things together. The records showed people vanishing every 7 years, always near the October full moon. Emma's words kept echoing in my head, "You need to leave before the moon." I had 3 days until the full moon, 3 days to gather as much information on the property as possible. If something truly strange was going on, I needed proof, not only to convince others, but to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Twice I took wrong turns and had to circle back, even though the route was simple. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was late afternoon. I used the last bit of daylight to walk the perimeter with my camera, photographing everything. About half a mile out, I noticed something odd, carvings etched into the bark of a massive pine. The symbol resembled some kind of creature with antlers and elongated limbs. The etching was weathered, old, but clearly intentional. As I continued along the boundary, I found more of the same markings on different trees, all facing inward toward the house. I photographed each one and marked their locations on my property map. They formed a rough circle enclosing the land. By the time I got back, the sun was already sinking. I quickly uploaded the pictures to my computer and drafted an email to William, attaching several of the carvings. "Mr. Blackwell, I've come across strange markings carved into trees along the property lines. They appear to be deliberate symbols forming a circle around the house. I've also experienced odd time discrepancies since my arrival, and the archives point to caretaker disappearances every 7 years. Please advise immediately. Thomas Mitchell." I hit send, though I doubted I'd get a response. None of my earlier messages had been answered, only brief notes like "got it" in reply to my weekly reports. After a quick meal, I set up motion-sensing wildlife cameras around the house. I'd originally brought them to capture photos of animals, but now they might help me identify whatever was leaving those massive tracks. That night, I double-checked every lock before heading to bed. Exhausted, I still couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the house and the sounds of the woods. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, a faint scratching against the wall near my window. Grabbing my flashlight and rifle, I carefully peered outside without getting too close. The scratching continued, moving slowly along the siding. I followed the sound from window to window but saw nothing in the dark. Then it stopped. The silence afterward felt heavier than the noise. And then, footsteps. Crunching on the gravel driveway. Too heavy to be human. I moved to the front room, keeping the lights off, and peeked through a gap in the curtains. The motion light had triggered, illuminating the driveway. Nothing stirred on the gravel, but at the very edge of the light, I caught a glimpse of something tall, unnaturally thin, slipping back into the trees. I waited nearly an hour before daring to step outside. Rifle ready, flashlight cutting across the yard, I examined the ground. Fresh prints dotted the gravel, massive footprints like the ones I'd seen my first day, but newer. They circled the house before heading back into the forest. Even worse were the scratches. Deep gouges ripped into the siding, far higher than any normal animal could reach. Whatever left them had to be at least 8 feet tall. I hurried back inside, barricading the doors with furniture. The rest of the night I stayed in the living room, rifle in hand, eyes on the windows, listening. The cameras would capture anything that approached, but the thought was little comfort. At dawn, I reviewed the footage. The first camera recorded only an empty yard, likely tripped by the wind. The second showed a deer sprinting across the property, fleeing from something unseen. The third made my blood run cold. Though blurry and partly obscured by leaves, the image was unmistakable. A figure stood at the edge of the forest. Too tall, too thin, limbs far too long, head crowned with what looked like twisted antlers. Its glowing white eyes caught in the camera's flash. I downloaded the photos immediately, adding them to my growing evidence file, then fired off another urgent email to William. Something is stalking the property. I've captured it on camera and found new tracks and claw marks on the house. Local records suggest things escalate during the full moon, which is in 3 days. I need immediate instructions, or I'll be forced to abandon the property for my safety. The email showed as sent. No reply. Same as before. I was alone. The full moon loomed closer. Emma's warning echoed again and again. 3 days left. I spent them reinforcing the house. Plywood over fragile windows. Rifle and ammunition checked and rechecked. More sensors set along the property. Each night, something circled the house, leaving its oversized tracks. But it never came as close as that first night. Today was different. From dawn onward, I heard unnatural noises in the woods, snapping branches, rustling brush, once even the sound of wood tearing. The cameras caught fleeing deer and a coyote bolting across the northern line, but not what chased them. As dusk fell, I knew I couldn't just wait inside. Whatever was out there was getting bolder. Packing my rifle, a high-powered flashlight, extra ammo, water, and emergency supplies, I stepped out into the frigid night. The October air was unnaturally cold, my breath hanging in thick clouds. Not a single normal sound, no owls, no small animals. The silence felt alive. Fresh tracks appeared about 100 yards from the house. Same elongated prints, but deeper, as if the creature had grown heavier. They led north, and I followed. The trail wound through dense forest, weaving like a predator hunting. 2 miles out, I reached an opening. The trees thinned, revealing a circular clearing about 50 feet across. The pines at its edges leaned away instead of toward it. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, 4 feet high, weathered with age, dark stains smeared across its surface. In the moonlight, the stains glistened as though still wet. Symbols etched into the earth encircled the altar in concentric rings, matching the carvings on the trees surrounding my land. I killed my flashlight, letting my eyes adjust. The air here was stale, heavy, as though undisturbed for centuries. Instinct told me to move quietly. Then, a twig snapped behind me. I spun, rifle raised, scanning the dark. A tall shadow shifted behind a tree to my left. "Hello." I called before instantly regretting it. A low rattle answered, like bones clicking together. I backed toward the clearing's edge, drawing my flashlight with one hand, rifle steady in the other. Whatever was out there circled me, just out of sight. Then everything went still. I flicked on the light, sweeping it across the tree lean, and froze. The beam caught it mid-step. At least 8 feet tall. A distorted human form, arms dangling past its knees, hands ending in long, black claws. Its skin resembled cracked gray bark stretched over bone. But the head, God, the head. A deer's skull, white and gleaming in the moonlight, crowned with twisted, unnatural antlers. Where its eyes should have been hollow, dull red lights glowed instead. It stood perfectly still, chest rising and falling slowly. Then its jaw opened far too wide, and from that skeletal mouth came the same unearthly scream I'd heard my first night here. Paralyzed with fear, I finally squeezed the trigger. 2 rounds tore into its chest where its heart should be. It didn't even flinch. The creature tilted its skull, as though puzzled by my actions. I aimed for the head and fired again. Bone splintered near the eye socket, a fragment flying off. The thing jerked back, not in pain, but in fury. And then it charged. I turned and ran, branches slashing my face, the thunder of its pursuit steady behind me. Its steps were unerringly measured, not rushed, but relentless. It didn't tire. The house came into view, windows glowing with the lights I'd left on. I sprinted across the yard, fumbling for my keys. At the tree lean, the creature stopped. I shoved the key into the lock, flung myself inside, and slammed the door. My hands trembled as I threw the deadbolt and dragged a bookcase against it. Through the window, I saw it. Standing at the forest's edge, skull lifted toward the moon. Then it screamed again, a sound echoed, something between a human scream and an animal's dying wail. Then it stepped into the yard. I rushed from window to window, checking every lock. The plywood I'd nailed over them suddenly felt useless against its strength. A scratching noise came from the east side of the house, claws raking the siding. I grabbed my rifle and moved into the kitchen, keeping low and away from the glass. The scratching slid along the wall until it reached the kitchen window. The curtain was shut, but through the fabric, I saw the outline of that antlered head, searching. The curtain shifted slightly as the creature pressed against the glass. The window groaned under the pressure, it wouldn't last. I backed toward the basement door. If there was any safe spot, it was the thick concrete walls underground. Glass shattered in the living room. It had found its way inside. Heavy footsteps pounded the wooden floor, followed by the crash of overturned furniture. I yanked open the basement door and rushed down the steps, slamming and locking it behind me. The basement was finished but sparsely furnished, storage, laundry, a small office space. No windows. Only one door. I dragged a heavy metal filing cabinet against it, then stacked a workbench and anything else I could find as reinforcement. Above, the creature stormed through the house. Wood cracked, glass splintered, heavy objects smashed into walls. I crouched in the farthest corner, rifle raised, eyes locked on my barricade. My hands shook uncontrollably. Sweat ran down my face despite the chill. The footsteps stopped right above me. Floorboards creaked as the thing stood still, like it was sensing me. Then, the basement doorknob turned. Once. Twice. The door rattled with a slam. I raised my rifle, knowing the bullets were nearly useless. Another strike shook the door, the cabinet sliding back slightly but holding. A hinge bent with a screech. Then, silence. The creature moved away, its footsteps fading into other rooms. For hours it wandered above, methodical. It wasn't just smashing things. It searched, opening closets, moving furniture. Sometimes it returned to claw or shove at the basement door, then drifted off again. Around 3 a.m., I heard it in what must have been William's office. Glass shattered, wood splintered. Then came the rustle of papers, drawers opening and closing. It was looking for something. By 4 a.m., the house fell quiet. I strained to hear, but nothing came. Maybe it had left. I couldn't check. My makeshift barricade looked pitiful in the flashlight's beam. If it came back, nothing would stop it. I stayed hunched in the corner, rifle across my knees, waiting for dawn. Finally, pale light seeped around the basement door's edges. The house had been silent for nearly 2 hours, but I didn't move until my muscles screamed from the strain. Inch by inch, I dragged the barricade away, wincing at the screech of metal against concrete. Ear to the door, I listened. Nothing. I eased it open a crack and peered out. The hallway lay in ruins, morning light spilling through shattered windows. Rifle ready, I stepped out. The house was destroyed. Furniture overturned and shredded, walls gouged down to their supports, every window broken. The kitchen was wrecked, cabinets hanging loose, dishes shattered, the fridge torn open, its contents ripped apart. Outside, the forest was silent. No birds. No squirrels. The stillness pressed against me. I knew I couldn't stay. The creature would return, and my rifle was useless. I packed fast, clothes, food, ammo, first aid, and the journal where I'd written everything. I shoved it all into a backpack and duffel, then checked the house one last time. William's office was destroyed. Papers scattered, desk overturned, computer smashed. Whatever the creature sought, I prayed it hadn't found it. I ran to my truck. Relief nearly made me collapse when the engine roared to life. I sped down the driveway, heading for Whitefish. With every mile, my breathing eased. My hand steadied. I was leaving it behind. 30 minutes later, the forest opened to a clearing. My heart stopped. The Blackwell house stood ahead. I slammed the brakes, gravel spraying. Impossible. I had been driving away. Panicked, I reversed, turned, and checked my GPS. It showed me 20 miles west of the house. Yet here it was. I tried again, this time east, mapping every turn, noting landmarks. After an hour, the road curved into a valley. The house waited there again. Desperation took over. I drove recklessly, north, south, any direction, sweat pouring, knuckles white on the wheel. Every road, every path, brought me back. On one last attempt, I took a logging road. The truck rattled violently. A loud bang, grinding metal, steam, dead engine. The house loomed through the trees, impossibly close. Cursing, I grabbed my rifle and backpack, leaving the rest. That's when I saw it, symbols carved into trees, rocks, even the ground. The same marks from the stone altar. Following them, I realized they formed a circle. A boundary. The house at its center. I was trapped. By dusk, I returned, the wreckage of the house now my only shelter. Searching William's office, I sifted through papers. Nothing useful. Then I noticed a painting hanging crooked. Behind it, a wall safe with a keypad. I tried dates, addresses, nothing. In a drawer, I found a small leather notebook. Its pages filled with handwritten entries spanning decades, each in a different hand but continuing the same. Notes on the property, the surrounding forest, and repeated mentions of something called the Guardian filled the pages. The most recent entries were dated 7 years ago, written in a sharp, angular script. October 23, 2016. The boundary weakens. I can feel it pressing inward, probing for flaws. The substitute is ready. The transition will happen tomorrow night beneath the full moon. Then the final entry read, October 24, 2016. The Guardian draws near. The circle remains intact. 7 years of peace secured. The code is the Day of Awakening. The Day of Awakening. I flipped back through the notebook, searching for more details about that phrase. Nothing concrete, but multiple entries tied awakening to October 24, the night of the full moon, the night I had seen the creature. I returned to the safe and entered 1024, October 24. The keypad rejected it. I tried alternatives. 2410, 24102016. None worked. Then I recalled the pattern in the newspaper archives I'd unearthed at the library. Caretakers changed every 7 years, always in October. 7 years before 2016 was 2009. Before that, 2002. I worked backward through each date until I reached 1897, the year the house had been built, according to the property records. This time the safe clicked open. Inside was a single manila envelope, my name written neatly across the front. I carried it to the kitchen table, brushed aside shards of glass, and sat down to see what William Blackwell had left behind for me. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope, pulling free several thick folded pages. The handwriting matched the signature on the welcome note, William Blackwell's elegant script. But instead of providing clarity, the letter only raised further questions. Thomas, if you are reading this, you found the safe. This is only the beginning. The truth is hidden where all great families conceal their secrets. Behind the walls. Beneath the floors. The history of this place runs deeper than you know. Seek it. That was all. No explanation of the creature, the boundary, or the reason I couldn't leave. Just a cryptic pointer toward family secrets. I crumpled the pages in frustration, then smoothed them flat again, rereading every word. Secrets behind the walls, beneath the floors. William was guiding me toward something concealed within the house itself. Despite the wreckage left behind from the creature's rampage, I needed to search room by room. I began upstairs, combing through each space for loose floorboards, hollow walls, any hint of concealment. The bedrooms yielded only wreckage, smashed furniture, torn bedding, broken mirrors. In what appeared to have been William's own room, I uncovered a desk with several drawers half emptied, though not entirely bare. From the bottom drawer, I retrieved a small ornate key. I pocketed it and pressed on. Downstairs, the common rooms revealed little beyond destruction. The kitchen's cabinets and appliances lay shattered, offering no secret compartments. The dining room's ruined china cabinet contained nothing but fragments. Finally, I returned to William's office, the room most thoroughly destroyed by the creature. Something significant had to be here. I scoured every inch, knocking on walls, testing floorboards, even examining the ceiling for panels. Then I noticed one bookshelf along the far wall that hadn't toppled like the others, though its books had been scattered. Marks on the floor suggested it had been moved often. I pushed against its side, and the entire shelf swung outward, exposing a hidden doorway. The heavy oak door beyond had a small keyhole, the ornate key slid in perfectly. With a deep breath, I turned it. A firm click, and the door creaked open without resistance. Inside was a small chamber lined with filing cabinets and glass cases. This, surely, was what William had directed me toward. One cabinet contained property records dating back to 1897, deeds, surveys, blueprints, and tax papers. A folder held old clippings about the house's construction. Blackwell Lodge complete. Industrialists hunting retreat ready for winter season. The article celebrated Thaddeus Blackwell, William's great-grandfather, who had purchased 500 acres of Montana wilderness to build his retreat. Another cabinet stored newer records, maintenance logs, expenses, and yearly folders marked 1991, 1998, 2005, 2012, 2019. Each contained detailed caretaker reports, the handwriting matching the black notebook. What disturbed me most were the photographs. Each folder held a picture of a man resembling me, same build, similar features, even dressed in ways eerily familiar. Each identified as a property caretaker, each replaced exactly 7 years later. One drawer held blueprints that revealed renovations from 1923 not present in the original plans. According to these, the basement I'd hidden in wasn't the lowest level. A second basement existed. As I drew closer, my breath stopped. Inside lay myself. Not a look-alike. Not a cousin. An exact copy. Same hair, same scar on my chin from a childhood fall, even the small mole on my neck. I staggered backward, colliding with a table. A wooden box tumbled off, spilling my driver's license, passport, credit cards, and photographs I'd never seen. Me at the Grand Canyon. Me at a stranger's wedding. Me shaking William Blackwell's hand in front of the house. Beside where the box had rested was another envelope, sealed with red wax bearing the Blackwell crest. My fingers shook as I broke it and unfolded several pages. Thomas, by now you've seen what lies beneath. Your replacement. Your continuation. The Blackwell land is not mere soil. It is a threshold. My great-grandfather did not simply build a lodge in 1897. He built a prison. This site rests at a weak seam between worlds, where something slipped through long ago, what native tribes called the Wendigo. It cannot be destroyed, only bound. The boundary falters every 7 years under the October full moon. To preserve it demands a sacrifice, a caretaker whose very essence sustains the seal while he changes. The house chooses its caretakers. It calls those who resemble the last, drawing them with lures they cannot refuse. For you, financial security. For me, isolation after scandal. We are all links in the chain. Each of us becomes the guardian. When the transformation ends, the WC will awaken, filled with your identity, your memories, your life. He will leave, living as you. And you will remain, the guardian at the gate. There is no escape. I tried everything, destroying symbols, torching the house, even ending my own life. The boundary restores itself. The house heals. Wounds vanish. The change began your first night here. Killing the replacement ensures only that when you are the guardian, no one will succeed you. Your sister, your friends, they will only believe you vanished. Accept it, Thomas. I did. 7 years of service for eternity as the hunter of these woods is a fair price, compared to unleashing what sleeps inside you upon the world. The choice, as it was mine, is yours. William. I read the letter 3 times, and each pass deepened the terror. The figure in the glass was not just a copy. It was my successor. When the process ended, it would walk out carrying my life, while I remained as the Wendigo. William's confession struck like a hammer. He had been the last caretaker. He had become the monster. And now it was my turn. I stared at the sleeping double, its chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Tubes sustained its unnatural slumber. According to William, it already held my memories, my identity. It would awaken believing it was me. While I rotted here, stripped of humanity. I laid my hand on the glass, the chill seeping into my skin. My reflection fused with the double's face, indistinguishable. That was the true horror, not only that I would become a monster, but that I would be replaced so seamlessly no one would ever know. I yanked my hand back as if burned, my reflection merging with the slumbering figure beneath the glass. One destined to walk free. One doomed to transform. No, I whispered aloud, my voice, echoed through the concrete chamber. I refuse to accept this. William's letter crumpled in my fist. He claimed there was no escape, that he had tried everything. But had he tried destroying the replacement? He wrote that it wouldn't help, that it would only ensure no one took my place in the outside world. Maybe that was enough. I studied the glass case more carefully. Tubes ran from the duplicate's arms and neck to machines lining the walls. Monitors displayed heartbeat, brain activity, and other readings I didn't understand. The whole setup looked like something out of a science fiction movie, not the rustic mountain property I had signed up to manage. The machines were connected to the concrete walls through conduits that disappeared into small holes. Following these connections led me to a central unit against the far wall, larger than the others, buzzing with power. A control panel on its front displayed symbols that matched those carved into the trees outside. This had to be part of the system maintaining the boundary, keeping me trapped here while preparing my replacement. I examined the tubes running into the case, trying to understand how they worked. Each one connected to a different machine, carrying fluids or electrical signals into the duplicate. Near the head of the case, I found what looked like an emergency release, a red lever behind a thin glass panel. Whether it was for safety or maintenance, it might be my way to interrupt this horrible process. I smashed the glass with the butt of my flashlight and pulled the lever. A hissing sound filled the room as pressure equalized. Lights on the surrounding machines flashed from green to yellow to red. Warning messages filled the screens, but I ignored them. The top of the glass case slowly lifted, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. I backed away, suddenly uncertain. What would happen if the duplicate woke up? Would it already have my memories, my thoughts? As the vapor cleared, the duplicate's eyes snapped open, my eyes staring at the ceiling. Goosebumps ran across my skin as it sat up robotically, tubes still connected to its body. Its movements were stiff and jerky. It turned its head toward me, but its gaze seemed unfocused. Those eyes, my eyes, looked empty. Nothing like the consciousness William had promised would be there. This thing wasn't me yet. It was just a shell waiting to be filled. A crash sounded from upstairs, followed by heavy footsteps. The Wendigo had returned to the property. I needed to act fast. Next to the control panel, I spotted a small utility room. Inside, I found tools, spare parts, and several containers of chemicals. One was labeled kerosene heating backup. It was nearly full. Grabbing the container, I returned to the main chamber. The duplicate had disconnected some of the tubes from its arms and was trying to stand. Upstairs, furniture scraped across the floor as the creature moved through the house. I unscrewed the cap from the kerosene container and began pouring it over the machines, starting with the central unit. The sharp smell filled the air as the liquid splashed across control panels and soaked into bundles of wires. I continued around the room, dousing every piece of equipment. The duplicate watched me with growing awareness, tilting its head in a way I recognized from my own habits. It opened its mouth as if to speak, but only managed a hollow rasp. "Sorry," I told it, feeling strangely guilty, "but neither of us belongs here." I saved the last of the kerosene for the glass case and the duplicate itself, pouring it directly over the bedding where it sat. The liquid soaked into the material and dripped onto the floor. Footsteps overhead moved closer to the study where the hidden entrance lay. I had minutes, maybe seconds. From my pocket, I pulled out a book of matches I had taken from the kitchen drawer days ago. With shaking hands, I struck one and held it up. "This ends now," I said, dropping the match onto the nearest puddle of kerosene. The fire caught immediately, racing across the floor and leaping onto the machinery. I backed toward the stairs as flames spread across the room. The duplicate just sat there, not moving, as fire climbed the glass case. The fire alarm upstairs went off, followed by sprinklers turning on. But the hidden basement had no safety systems. The flames grew larger, burning through the equipment that had kept this horror alive for over 100 years. When the duplicate caught fire, a piercing scream ripped through the air. But it wasn't from the basement, it came from outside. The sound climbed higher and higher until it seemed impossible that anything alive could make such a noise. I ran up the stairs, through the study, and into the main house. Water sprayed from the ceiling, already putting out the smaller fires from the Wendigo's earlier rampage. Through the broken front windows, I saw it, the creature William, thrashing on the lawn. Its stretched limbs bent in unnatural ways as it writhed in pain. The connection between the boundary magic, the duplicate, and the Wendigo was real. Destroying one affected the others. I grabbed my backpack from where I had left it by the front door, making sure my journal and the most important evidence were inside. The basement fire would spread eventually, even with the sprinklers. I needed to get away while the creature was still incapacitated. Outside, I stayed wide of the twitching Wendigo and ran toward my truck. It was still where I had left it, damaged with its cracked radiator and broken axle. It shouldn't have been drivable. Yet when I turned the key, the engine roared to life strong and loud. I didn't question the luck. I threw the truck into reverse, backed up, and sped down the gravel driveway. In the rearview mirror, smoke poured from the house windows, and the Wendigo still twisted on the lawn. The property boundary had always forced every road back to the house. No matter which way I drove. But I tested it now, heading west on the main access road. The forest blurred by on both sides. 10 minutes passed. 15. The house didn't reappear. I had broken through. A smile spread across my face, then vanished as sharp pain shot through my right hand. I looked down and froze. My skin was turning gray and hard, like bark. Cracks spread across my knuckles, crawling toward my wrist. I tried moving my fingers, but pain jolted through me as the hardened skin resisted. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The boundary was broken, but the change had already begun. William's letter hadn't said what came first, becoming the guardian or being replaced. Maybe both began at the same time. I had destroyed the duplicate, but maybe I was too late. The chilling thought struck me. I had stopped my replacement from taking my life, but I couldn't stop myself from turning into the monster. My left hand throbbed with pain. Then both arms. My skin hardened and cracked as the transformation spread. I pressed harder on the gas, the truck's engine roaring as I raced from the Blackwell property. But deep down, I knew, I couldn't escape what was happening to me.